What's going on, everyone? What's going on?
I didn't get the
What's
yellow.
up?
I didn't get the yellow memo. I guess so. I wore. I'm purple.
You didn't get the.
You know?
I didn't even know.
I was off book. It's all good. We look good. It looks good though. It's Pirates yellow. So DP, it makes sense you wouldn't wear it. You're not off.
Yeah, DP, we wouldn't expect you to wear that. We do not expect you to wear that.
Gold's not a part of your culture like it is for us.
No,
It's
brown
okay.
is.
Brown, orange, red, and blue.
And tears. Lots of tears.
Oh, see. Let's start the show. Okay, yeah. You can find us at nerdcyclopedia.com where you get all your favorite social media at Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and also TikTok, question mark. You know, if you listen to us on podcasts, we're on iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Odyssey, anywhere that you listen to your favorite podcast. Guess what? We're there. If you're watching us on YouTube, thank you. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Also, hit that notification button so anytime that we're on, you know that we're on. If you're watching us on Facebook, make sure that you share our content as well. Drop us a line. Drop us an email too. We're at nerdcyclopediafeedback@gmail.com. So it's free. Just make sure that just send it. It doesn't cost anything at all to type. To, put your buttons on these letters that come with your computer. In other words, it's free. Yeah. So go ahead and send us some feedback. It don't cost you a thing.
Well
Just
said,
your pride
well
if we read it.
Yeah.
Respond.
For sure. And yeah, guys, another exciting week. We kind of let in with a fun intro. And we are here for our episode 7 review, man. I mean, this is like
we're getting there.
This is T. Mitch's highlight of the week.
We're getting there.
This is my highlight of the week is being able to talk to you guys.
You're lined up. You're lined up like a defensive end that's like poorly hiding a blitz at 9:00 every Tuesday. We know it because what's great is we give ourselves a day because we have
everybody what's going on.
Well, we give ourselves this day because we have this life and we have kids and then jobs and all this other stuff because podcasting doesn't pay the bills. That's not so we do all this other stuff. But T Mitch watches right away, so we always know. I can always tell how long the episode's going to be because of when the texts start coming in, which I really like a lot. It's great. I think it's great. But it is the best time of your week, right?
But
it is.
But we have. That's a great segue because next week, guess what, guys?
It's the end.
It is the end, and we're going straight live Tuesday night after this episode airs.
Mm-hmm.
So you will get us live,
You may notice
uncut.
Some of us
feedback.
Yeah.
So
I ruminate
back for this.
So if you catch me right from the tap, I'm a lot different than if you let me age in a mellow cask for a day. So
it's like a bottle of wine, you gotta decant it a little bit. You know what I mean? Let it sit out, let it air out a little bit. But
Please, T. Mitch, don't drink during next week's episode. So don't do that.
I'm not.
I don't know if you knew this, T. Mitch, but if you do that and we broadcast, the internet will kick us off. We'll be done. The internet forever.
Mickey Mouse won't be happy.
You want to come back?
I can't do that. I cannot do that. I mean, honestly, guys, it is what it is at this point. I thought that we were all in consensus, but I'm hearing people say other things. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the show is okay. It's not like the worst. It's okay, right? I'm not going to sit here and say like it's like.
Can we do a safety tree, like a safe space, safe nest? 1 out of 10 ranking. That's not just I just want to poll the room, like the series so far.
Okay.
T Mitch, because I know I just want to.
Let's do T Mitch last.
Okay.
Let him.
I seriously doubt. I seriously doubt that either of us is going to have a higher number than you because I feel like you're the most optimistic about this stuff amongst the 4 of us. So what would you say? Like scale of 1 to 10, Acolyte so far as presented, it is a.
Talking to Ken?
Yeah, Ken.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Ken.
I'm going to give it right now. I'm going to give it a solid 7.
I fucking said it. He's drunk.
Wait. 7.3. I'll tell you what. This episode is, in my opinion, the strongest one, in that it truly was Star Wars, and it felt like it to me.
Oh my God!
It had the elements. It had a lot of quippy dialogue, which we kind of got away from. It had respectable lightsaber usage. It wasn't lightsabers just to.
Let's write this down, please. I'm writing this down.
It wasn't lightsabers for the sake because we have the technology and we need to have lightsabers. It was lightsabers with intent. Okay.
Oh, with intent, definitely.
Yeah, we're going to talk about intent as well. So that's another point I'm going to write down.
That's the bottom. That's the thing. I also felt that this episode, even though it's 7 and it's
7.3
almost the end, this episode should have been the first thing I saw. This episode should have been 1. And I liked it in the respect that it introduced all our characters. I actually felt connected to the twins during this episode because I understood a little bit more about where they came from and the struggle they had with their family. I understand why Osha and May were in divergence. I like that they brought up the virgins because that's something from Phantom Menace. It was virgins around a person. Now
there we go.
Around a object. Okay. So to me, it harkened forward to the next level of the story, which was Phantom Menace. As far as this whole thing is playing out. And I understand the writing in this particular story we're talking about it's not the best. It's kind of hammered. It's a little sloppy. It's a little choppy. I do feel the episodes were released poorly. I really feel that if you watch 7 and 1, you get a much better story. Like, take the opening scroll out or the opening paragraph. Just watch episode 7, then watch 1. You get it. You can throw 3 out the window. Episode 3 was trash. We don't need it anymore because episode 7 built enough backstory that we don't need to go back. Another thing I thought about, and I've been thinking about this all day because our conversations and T. Mitch is probably on an emotional level. He's like a 20 out of 10. Okay. In all with good respect. You know, I get it. I get why you wanted something, you're not getting it, and you continue to get junk over what you think is what it should be. All I'm looking at is what we have and what we can work with the story thus far.
All right.
You know, and I'm in the whole flashback thing, I'm on the fence with that in any story. Like, give me the backgrounds up front. Let me build the story like like a train. Give me the engine, then give me the coal car, and then give me the box cars, and then give me the tankers. Give me the the grain and the feed, and then the caboose. Like, make it make sense, but don't jump it around. And that's a new thing in Star Wars. Like, that never was anything in the original trilogy, the prequel, the
flashbacks.
Flashbacks were trash.
Yeah. Right.
When they started to do flashbacks, that's when the story started to go like off the rails. There's a train reference again, but I like the Wookiee fight. Wookiee with a lightsaber. That was something that Steel City was looking for. That checked a box for him. So I think this episode was the strongest one thus far, and I also feel it should have been number 1. And
so with all you said, that determines what a 7 rating for a show is?
Are we talking about the episode or the actual whole show? As far as
the whole show. Now,
this is just to get a barometer. This is just to get a barometer, right? Because I want to understand. I want it just to be understand to be clear. This is
are you a 7? Are you a 7?
We want to see whether they're dead or alive.
You're 7.3 for the whole series.
Are you a 7.3 for the whole series?
For the whole series, yes.
Okay. Criminal.
Okay.
No.
I think we're gonna get a Russian judge score from Team Mitch.
Hey,
Is what I'm thinking might happen, guys. I don't know.
Could I go next? Could I go
Yes.
next?
You absolutely
Go
can go next, Steve.
Okay, I'll go next. So I'm right there at a 5. It's like it's mid to me. You know, if I've never really used that term,
mid.
but I'm using
That's mid,
I'm
bro.
using,
I
I'm
like
using
that.
term. Yeah,
I like that.
yeah.
It's mid. I like that. It's mid.
Is if you want to talk about halfway between 1 and 10, that's where I'm at. It's sort of like this past episode sort of insulted my intelligence a bit. Although I thought it was a good episode, I'm sort of like Ken. But I thought it sort of insulted my intelligence because I seen the flashback thing done way better in another show, and it was called Lost. You know, when you're doing perspective stuff, it's you sort of have to do it in a depth type of way. You know, you have to. It's a better way to go about it, and from the way they made the third episode the one part, and then this episode like the second part of it. You know, they could have really combined, as Ken said, combined both of those stories and just put it in like the beginning as its own prelude and stuff. You can cut half of that stuff out and just combine all the crucial elements instead of trying to play like the whole, okay, well, it happened from this perspective, so this is the reason why it happened. You know, you're not that clever. This series didn't really show me that cleverness to sort of make this episode, the seventh episode, okay. Well, I see that they're trying to be like, you know, this and that. So it sort of bakes into like the overall thing for me as far as the acting, as far as like the whole mystery of it, just sort of just okay, you know, as Tima said, just okay, just mid, you know. So I'm giving it like as a whole barometer, like Steel City said, a 5.
To me, and I feel like I agree with both of you guys a lot. Like a lot of the stuff you said, Ken, really resonated with me as far as what are my gripes or like what are the technical faults that I would find here, right? And to me, it's the lack of economy and things being presented in this weird order as a flourish to reveal information to me that I could have just been told. And I feel like it's like if I'm eating a meal, like if I'm watching Top Chef and they do like 4 courses and the 4th course isn't a dessert, they always say something about it. They're always like, why isn't this a dessert? This is the end of the meal. You gave me 4 courses. So for me, having the dessert here is just out of place. So to me, it's a 4.5. It's slightly below because there is some good stuff here. I mean, and maybe it's just my expectations have been different because this was first and we were seeing this and we were seeing the OSHA stuff, you know, right up front. Those episodes 3 and 7. I take more of 3 than you can. I think there was some valuable stuff in there, and I like the idea of the lesbian Sith nuns. Like this whole thing is interesting to me. The stuff they're doing, the Black Mist thing, I want to know more about it. I am interested to know more about that. All of them being dead all of a sudden after doing all that hand dancing or whatever. You know what I mean? The show choir thing that they were doing. They all died at the end of that. I want to know why that happened because I want to know what they were up to. Because I think what they were doing with this Virgins is a lot more important than either OSHA or May really. And that's what I want to know. And I want to know how that ties into Khmer and the rest of the stuff that we're seeing in the regular timeline. And yes, I'm frustrated that we had to go back to the past to get this information to bring it back to the future because they could have just ended that episode. If they'd already shown this stuff early, they could have just ended that episode. May, I've got to tell you something. Pick up right here. He's done telling her, and now we're moving on with the story. But instead, we have to stop, go all the way back just to see the same, basically, other scenes from the same day. Because it's not even really from a different. It's not even a different perspective. It's other characters' actions. So I don't know. To me, the twist that Soul killed May and OSHA's mom is pretty interesting. I did like the fact that they were able to possess the Wookiee. I thought the fight was cool. I mean, you know, having Master Torben wearing ironclad plot armor in that fight, right? That's another problem with having it here. Torben survives this, so they're not ever in jeopardy. And so, yeah, Team Mitch, I think, I'm not going to try to steal all your thunder, but you pointed out that this fight ends in a weird way where Torben shouldn't really be able to stop this Wookiee powerful death blow with a backhanded block. That really shouldn't be possible. So Torben should be dead, but he can't die because May has to kill him later on in episode 2 or episode 3 or whatever the heck that was, right? So I don't know. To me, it feels like if you cut this right, you can make a really good movie depending on next week, because you have got to pay off. You've got to pay off some Sith stuff for me next week. I mean, there's still a lot of checks drawn on this account, and I don't know how much money they got left, frankly. I don't know what's going to bounce, what's going to make it. I do say I have to give them credit back for the Wookiee fight, because listen, they did, Ken, you're right. Give me what I said I wanted. I wanted to see the Wookiee fight. It was weird. We got some interesting stuff. Carrie-Anne Moss got to do some more stuff, which was pretty cool. But man, how do you look at this story that's basically so far like a baseball game and show me the third inning before the first inning and then the ninth inning and then the fourth? Don't do that. Just show me the story. Show me the story if it's just a straightforward story. But those are my real gripes here. It's not like it's abysmal. It's not like I'm angry. It's not like they're walking through the woods again. I do think that they wasted a lot of time. I think they probably could have done this in 4 episodes, which means it could have been a 2-hour movie, a 2.5-hour movie. You could have had a running time, I would say, comparable with like Rise of Skywalker. Mm-hmm. And if you want to tell me that this got messed up by the strike or COVID or whatever, honestly, you could have put more stuff in here because you're in the past 100 years. So why not just sprawl it out and make more stuff before it and more stuff after? I mean, that's the easiest way to fluff up a story from what I know. And I'm not a storyteller per se, but that's what I know they do. So I don't know. It just feels like a wasted opportunity where you have this really, really interesting, a lot of really interesting characters, a lot of really interesting scenarios, a lot of really interesting actors that are playing these characters. And it's just that the sum of the parts is not greater, it's not greater than the whole is not greater than the sum of the parts, right? Mm-hmm. And to me, when you have $180 million budget, it's not excusable for that to be the case, right? However, if I were to tell you, how am I enjoying this? What am I feeling about it right now after 7 episodes? I'd say this is better than the last couple. I liked 7 better than 5, which is the other darling, the one everyone likes on the internet. So I'm not at like a 0 or a 1 or something like that, because I'm not all the way out of patience. And I think that they could pay off some of this stuff in a way that I would find valuable for my Star Wars viewing career, right? So maybe I could see it going up after next week if they do actually explain some of this stuff they need to explain. I could see it going down next week because they show me more of that flashback. We don't need any more of that. That's enough. We don't need to see it from a third perspective. So, unless it's Kamir's perspective or something interesting like that, or character you didn't know was around, but I don't see that happening, and I don't want them to do that.
It's too late for that. Quick question: have any of you guys seen that Russian Dolls TV show the showrunner did before?
I watched the first season.
Okay,
I watched the first season. I liked it a lot. I didn't watch the second just because it was too long of a gap and I had other stuff going on. So whatever. I'm not 100% faithful to all television franchises that I watch.
Yeah.
But I thought season 1 of Russian Doll was really smart. There was a lot of stuff in that show because that was a puzzle box where they were presenting things out of time and the way the characters experienced a certain amount of time, and like it's all factored into the plot. So it's much more complicated. It's like that's more of like a Clockwork Orange, right? Where everything's moving. That's
interesting that you say that. Maybe she did try to play with some of the elements into this show, based on what she did with that.
I could see that being the case.
Yeah, that's definitely her style as a director. That's what she likes to do.
But it's like but that show is all about showing, not telling, right? It's about there's things that are happening symbolically to these characters. There's things that are become disjointed and it's weird, right? There's a lot of weird stuff, which is why I thought this would be a more weird Star Wars show. Weird, not just different.
Weird.
Yeah, I thought we would get a lot more stuff like the Sith nunnery, right?
Right.
That's weird. That feels like it's of a piece of Star Wars, but it's a different flavor. It's like pistachio, right? Not vanilla. It's just a little different. I was thinking we get more stuff like that, but it's weird that there doesn't seem to be a mystery here. And there certainly isn't a mystery now, because the only mystery at play, apart from anything that's going on with the Sith, which we're not seeing, is what the heck happened with with May's family, right? They're all dead, and it's what happened here, and it's just an institutional cover-up of something that was the equivalent of an Old West shootout that gets out of hand in a saloon. Like, it's
they all died. They expended all their black magic.
They're out of mana.
The Wookiee, right?
Well, that's the other thing. So you spent 2 episodes here, 2 episodes in the lead up to that, and I don't understand what that was. I don't get how they do their power. The black mist thing was not explained to me. Like, they didn't even say, when the time is right, we're going to do this, 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 and this, and that's the process, and you'll know it because of whatever. Or they didn't allude to any of those things so that we would have an idea. So I find myself a little bit dissatisfied with the resolution, because I didn't understand what was going on. Now, maybe part of that is that Soul didn't either.
Didn't Morgan and the Night Witches and Ahsoka kind of allude to sort of being able to disapparate their physical and move within the Force? Wasn't that part of their thing, their religion? That was. I mean,
well, the difference with Night Sisters, though, compared to this, is Night Sisters necessarily didn't use the Force; they used magic. So that's where, like, they kind of it splits, right? There's a Force, then there's magic, and in this element, she decided to take both, which are 2 different sides of the coin, and make them one. Which, once again, is a storytelling no-no, especially in this medium. But I mean,
I don't know. I don't have a problem.
Why would that be a story? Well, I guess first of all, let's
because you're creating an unstoppable.
Let's get your rating.
Yeah,
it's a 4. It's nothing crazy. It's a 4.
I
had high hopes. No, it's a 4. I mean, it's not the worst. I mean, there were some great characters in it. There were some. It's just it's one of those things, and I told you this when we started. It just runs out of time. I just the order thing. I tried to watch them in different order, and ultimately, when you flop the order of it, then you really see. Well, if you flop the order, what we discussed and what it should be, then it's so front loaded. The back half is a waste of time, because like it's just, if you watch it in the order that we watched it, I watch it, and there's so much in the backstory to where we get in the main story. Think about it. All you find out is Khmer is here, and he's looking for a Padawan. Now he has a Padawan. He's stuck on an island that nobody knows about. They're in a ship going somewhere. Master, whatever the hell her name is, with the laser whip, is on another planet. So we have 3 different factions on 3 different planets. Nobody knows where the hell they are, and we have 38 minutes to finish the show. That's because the runtime is 42 minutes, so let's call it 30.
My concern here is you have 2 episodes where they have like twins, so to speak, and they should be 1 episode, and that is 3 and 7. And Ken actually pointed this out when you were talking about the order to watch these, and I was like, "Where's 3?" And you're like, "You don't need that. We don't need that one at all."
Yeah,
chuck it out of here.
3 had the flashback, but it didn't go into enough in depth like 7 did.
Version, yeah.
So to me, it's like if you put 3 and 7 together, that's 1 episode of, like, you cut it down a little bit and eliminate the duplicates.
And I think you get first. Watch that edit first.
And then you have, but you also have episode 4 and episode 5 on I don't even remember the name of that stupid planet, but that forest planet where we have the fight with Khmer and all the switcheration takes place. That should really have only been 1 episode. So you have, four of these 4 episodes is aired should be really 2. So you have 2 episodes of space that the story leaves you here. So why are we feeling like, hey, we're at the end? And I agree. There's a lot of balls in the air. There's a lot of checks that have been written. And we have to cash all the checks with Khmer and Osha. We have to cash all the checks with Soul and May. We have to cash all those checks. There's not a lot of time to do that. So, I mean, it just seems like there'd be. I feel in my bones that there's a good movie in this somewhere, and they made a mistake. They made a mistake by trying to make it a season because they thought this story would have legs. So rather than
Right.
being a sequence of movies or a sequence of 2-hour specials or a 4-episode limited series, they said, okay, we think that there's enough legs on this, but this first story only has enough, should only be the first half of that first season.
Mhm.
I mean, that's all it should be, is the first half. And then the rest of the story, like, because we don't even know the title, The Acolyte, could refer to May, could refer to Osha, could refer to Coral, right? It could refer to their mom with the Darth Maul horns. It could refer to Kamir. It could refer to any number of these people. It could refer to all of them. So if the question of the first season, if the number one question they have to explain to me is, what's the title of your show mean, right? I'm waiting on that.
And the scary thing, Steel City, is the Acolyte might not even be a character we've been introduced to yet.
That would be badass. That's not a bad. That's not a bad introduction.
That's too much. That's too much.
But I mean,
if that's the case, and that's the twist of this season, then it's inexcusable for you to have done what you did by moving that timeline around and making it seem like the twist was that Soul did this lightsabering and there was this fight here where the Jedi got kind of ambushed by, Force users they weren't expecting. And then they were told to, like, hey, kick rocks and get off this planet. We don't want you messing with those witches. Leave them alone. No one knows they're there anyway. It'll be a big pain in the ass if we have to explain where some kid, you killed them all.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's
curious question.
And there was definitely more kid abuse in this, recognized by Torben, and it also leads to explaining stuff like we saw why Torben's face was all messed up, and we now know why he looked that way. That was something I was curious about. But I mean, you're right. Like, what's the Acolyte? Like, who are we focused on? Because, like I said, in previous weeks, there's really no character that I'm invested in. Like, Soul is pretty cool, and now with the events in this choice episode, I dig his sort of dark side a little bit more than I did before. But there really isn't anyone else that I'm like vested in, and that was something in like Star Wars. There was always a character that you're like, yeah, I really want to know what happens to Boba Fett. Like, he's so dark and brooding in the background. Like, what's his deal? Like, that's why Boba Fett's always a focus for me in any Star Wars story ever. But they're really like Acolyte. Like, I wanted to know, like, who is that? And we don't really know. We don't know who that is supposed to be.
Question, T. Mitch, going back to what you were saying about magic and the Force being a storytelling, like, why do you feel like it should not be like that?
Because the only person, and this is where like I start to get a little frustrated, because like there's like a guideline to Star Wars, and then so we're taking this back to the only people that basically can do that is somebody. I didn't want to foreshadow this, but always let the cat out the bag, right? So the only person that can essentially do that, use magic in the Force, would be the Wills. And obviously, Lady Abeloth, which is like the mother that is calling to Baylan Skoll, which will be on Ahsoka season 2. Hint, hint. That's the person who's calling to him, which is like the Sith. She's basically like the ultimate version. So there is, remember, the son, the father, and the daughter. The mother was missing. Well, the mother was like super evil. She's like gone, lost. That's her. The mother's name is Lady Abeloth. So yeah, Lady Abeloth is like this like ultimate like evil.
What's the technical definition difference? If you're saying that there's so there's
power level thing, and like you can't.
What's the difference between the Force and magic?
Well, the Force magic, you can like raise the dead, right? I mean, Night Sisters use magic. You can do things. You can conjure up spells. You essentially can shoot fireballs and shit. Like,
okay, that's not the dark side of the Force.
Shooting lightning is one thing. Shooting fire, creating fire, like lightning, Force lightning is something we have. I mean, unless that some new director is going to create some new Force ability that I haven't seen on a video game or something, which is possible. Like, the dark side only has certain capabilities. So,
I mean, it's pretty. You can do a lot. I mean, Luke created fire, at his father's funeral. I mean, that fire he created, he imbued that from the Force. I mean, he didn't like rub sticks together and bake that fire.
I don't know where the evidence for that is in the text.
I read it. It's in the books. It's in dialogue, but he didn't like start a fire. He might have started it with his lightsaber.
We talked about this. We talked about this. We're gonna judge what's on the screen.
Yeah, right. So Ken, basically what you're saying. So if we're judging it like that, when Yoda used the Force lightning and this is another problem I have with Star Wars. Yoda used the Force lightning, remember, to burn that tree down in the Rise of Skywalker, whatever.
Yeah.
Who can lose lightning only, right? So where are we going? Like that was another thing that I
but Yoda was also making a point that it's all kind of stupid to really say light and dark. It's all just power, right? I thought that was the whole thing.
That's where like Star Wars, and that's where I wanted to go. Like, and that's where I like where the Ahsoka character becomes. And if we think about the strongest Jedi, kind of like I was getting the DP, they all kind of fall in the middle, right? Which are the people who typically carry the purple lightsabers, because somebody who carries a purple lightsaber draws into the darkness of their self, which causes them to fight stronger. So anybody who has a purple lightsaber is usually the most proficient in fighting, and they usually have some kind of dark side capabilities, which is what made Mace so aggressive in some cases. So I don't know. It's just one of these things. They have the witches, because if you think about a character like perspective and a character trait, if they had the ability to have like be an ultimate Night Sister, they would be way more stronger than they are. And then if that's the case, if we're saying that, so how the hell is Osha so manipulated so easy, right? I'm gonna just put this helmet on because, like, you know what I mean? You would be a lot more strong-willed. Even May, like the way they get subdued. If you were telling me like you're a Saiyan and now you can transcend the Super Saiyan, you're not going to be then so easily swayed, right? It's crappy writing. Like I said, the show has great elements, right? And she really has a lot of good meat there, but maybe there's too many chefs in the kitchen. Like I like the elements, you know what I mean? I like what she was trying to do. I just think that there's too many ideas. Like she was just throwing shit on the wall and picking things, and that needs explaining, right? If we're gonna do, because I can dig the coven thing, the lesbian coven and all that. I can dig that because different witches have different covens. You have Night Sisters, you have this, you have that, so I can get that. But like, let's explain that. Like we said, that needed more backstory as to the magic, like them turning into these like raven type creatures, and then like being able to possess things. That's like we need more. Like I wanted to know what is this like, right? What is whatever it is, ascension? Like we need to see ascension. So can May ascend? Is she gonna like do this and like jump into Saul? We don't know, but she has the markings. So we have 43 minutes. Is she going to ascend in these next 43 minutes? Like, we kind of have to pay that off that she touched her head and she's the last one with the ability, right? We have to pay that off that she ascended and her sister didn't. So there's a clear difference between the characters. So Osha typically can't kill May if we're just going based on what we've seen.
Well, I think you're right. And these sorts of, this show is like a guy who's like a defensive end in college, but he's small. Right? He's like 250, 260 pounds. And then in the NFL draft, he goes like fourth. And he ends up having like 90 sacks because he's actually an outside linebacker and he was playing defensive end. Right? It's kind of like
This is TJ Watt. Yeah, it's
TJ. We'll pick TJ Watt. That's why we're wearing our yellow today. Since a lot of us are. Some of us are Steelers fans on this show. Some of us are. So to me, that's the thing here. It feels like it feels like it should be better than it is. And that's sometimes more frustrating than something that's just bad. Like when we got to this point of Boba Fett and we were all just kind of like, come on, like enough of this. Can we do something different? Like when we got to this point of Boba Fett, we were all just sort of like, whatever, because we were not invested. But here it feels like frustrating because we should be getting something that's exactly on it. And there's just stuff where there's scenes that should be subtracted. There's subplots that should be subtracted. The whole, Woodlands exterminator thing they're doing with their lightsabers could be subtracted. There's just stuff in here that doesn't belong. And in a lot of ways that reminds me of Phantom Menace because there's such, if you just cut out the Ahmed Best performance as Jar Jar Binks from that movie, it's very, very different. And I don't mean that as a negative thing toward Ahmed Best, because that he was being directed to perform in a certain way and did it. But if you replace that dialogue with just like the random alien garbled nonsense that you get sometimes with Star Wars, it's a very different movie with a very different tenor. So in some ways, this reminds me of my feelings about Phantom Menace, which is, hey, if you cut this down maybe 10 minutes, like if you cut Phantom Menace down 10 minutes, I think it'd be a lot better movie. And here, when somebody does it, because, hey, someone's going to do it. People do fan edits of everything. And that's something I think we should maybe look into more, is the fan edits, and does that change our mind about something? But someone's going to fan edit this in the way we're saying, where they're going to show it. They're going to put the stuff together. They're going to put it together chronologically. It's going to be available for us to watch. And my prediction is that when someone does that, if they're good, and it's going to be like, instead of being, what is it, like 4.5 or 5 hours at 8 episodes, it's going to be 2.5 tight, good hours where we understand what's going on. We're showing our talent. Let's say we keep all the stuff everybody seems to like, which is all the lightsaber fighting, right? All of that gets to stay. And I think that it would be really, really good. And I'm honestly looking forward to that. But what that means is that the people that produced this made mistakes somewhere along the way. And I don't know. To me, I don't know that I want them to get more seasons because I would rather see different creators that haven't made these sorts of errors, that haven't made things that are fundamentally reduce the quality of the product during the process, which is just the way I'm going to put my feeling on that. I want to see other creators do other things, maybe in the same sandbox, maybe in the same era, right? Maybe with more Old Republic, maybe the same characters, because, at 100 years removed, whoever survives this next thing, they're all young. I mean, even Soul's only going to be he could only be about 45 years old here. You can jump 20 years in the future, show these exact same people in a different series, different story. And I think it could be very, very engaging. But I would rather Disney expend the budget for those productions with other production teams, because the way this was made indicates that there are serious issues. It's like, and I've been watching a lot of Top Chef, so I'm going to keep using it. When Tom Colicchio says the butchery in the meat is wrong, it's cut wrong, so it's tough, or it's cut wrong, so it's not looking right on the plate. That's a fundamental issue with the training of the chef. So to me, because of what I'm seeing, I want to see something different from this era.
It's hard, and on one hand, you get a Tony Gilroy who doesn't give a crap about any of this stuff, but knows how to make a damn good story. So either you chase after those types, and still Andor is still one of its lowest rated, shows for whatever reason. It's critically acclaimed, but and I mean, we've all seen that show, but it's one of their lower rated shows.
Because there's no lightsabers in the Force.
Yeah.
Is it even Star Wars when there's not?
That's the only reason why it's what it is.
And it does start off slow. So if you're not really into those first 3 episodes, you're, unfortunately for you, it's a lost cause.
You got to make it past the heist, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't seen Andor, which I cannot believe you're watching our show, you've not watched that show. You got to make it past the heist.
There's no Force, there's no Jedis, there's no lightsabers. It's because it's Empire focused. The Empire has taken over the galaxy, so there are no Jedi. That totally makes sense. They have been extinguished from the galaxy at this point, so that's why there's no lightsabers. And lightsabers to me are not what makes Star Wars. Star Wars is battles and evil against good, and cool costumes and helmets, and obviously special effects. Space battles are a big thing. I mean, that to me is what makes it. Lightsabers are cool.
All the stuff that you're saying was really not in Andor.
Correct. That's why the score. That's why it was bad.
Empire.
But the Empire, that portion was, yes, the Empire is like the dominant thing in Andor. But all that other stuff, that you're saying that would make Star Wars, it was not in Andor.
No,
but they had enough. The texture was all still there, though.
Exactly, DP, and that's the point I was getting to you guys since the show started. No matter what you think about Tony Gilroy, he at least followed the script. He went his own way. But bro, Star Wars, there is. I'm telling you guys this from day one, and Ken, you of all and should know this. There is a Bible. There's a commandment. There are rules to this game, and I don't like people like this who like to just veer off and create their own. Like that's honestly.
To Tony Higuera's credit, he was really telling a story about an empire being taken over. I mean, you could have put that story in like real life, and it could have still had the same elements.
You would have trusted this lady with that show.
I think you could,
with
and
Andor?
I think, but Andor is very straightforward. Also, it doesn't have the same sort of philosophy that this has. It doesn't have. I mean, you could change just the setting, and you're right. I think you're right. You could set it in the wild Old West, or heck, you could set it downtown Pittsburgh right now. Make it, the first half it's a payroll heist, and as we all know, some of us are intimately involved in payrolls very frequently, at least every 2 weeks. So to me, I think you could give her that because it's more straightforward. And what we get dissatisfied, it's these big ticket things when they try to move the ball on, what is the Jedi, when they try to move the ball on who can do what, or those you're right. That's, I think, what we don't like all the time. But sometimes I think that's set. Like my thing is when I don't like something, I like to ask myself, why don't I like it? And that perhaps is the reason that Nerdcyclopedia exists, why I'm involved in Nerdcyclopedia, why I'm involved in podcasting, why I do this every week where we talk about these shows that we sift through and go through with a fine-tooth comb. And to me, I just think this is the type of show where I look at it and I have to say there's reasons I don't like this, and some of it's maybe that's targeted somewhere else, but I think some of it's maybe that I would have wanted them to make different choices with the structure. But really, when I look at, okay, there's a Force sect with weird powers we don't know what exactly it is. Is it the Force? Maybe. Is it something else? Who knows what it is, right? We don't know if, like, to your point, we don't know if the mother is buried under this mountain they're on. We don't know what's going on at all with the dark side. So that's the stuff that, and maybe, for me, bugs me when it bugs you, T. Mitch, more when it's not all the way lined out, because that ambiguity bugs you. The ambiguity of who's right and wrong. Who's good.
It brings up so many, when you deal with like stuff in the past, if you're not really on point with it, it brings up so many questions, which is what we're hearing with, like, T. Mitch, and you two would agree, Steel City. Yeah. It brings up so many questions on things that happen in the future. If they stop telling these stories and be more confident in going past Rise of Skywalker, I think maybe, you can get a little bit more freedom with some of these creators to tell better, quote unquote, better stories.
But DP, it's not even that at all, because we can go in the past, but like I said, there are certain rules established, right? I'm just gonna give you guys a quick story. So the two twin sisters, right? So they were created out of the Force. They were virgins in the Force, correct? We got that established, right? The sister,
well, we don't know, because it's not a virgins around a person.
Yeah, it's like how Luke goes into that cave, right?
Yeah,
the cave is a Force virgins, and it amplifies the power of the dark side, which is what a virgin does.
So it's not necessarily the twins. Now they allude to that, T-Mitch. They allude to whether they're drawn from some identity and split and became two separate individuals, but we don't know. That wasn't explained.
It's like if you go back, if one of these kids, if you put a kid in the world between worlds and they come out of a door that's 1 minute behind the kid that's standing there, right? There's two of them, and they'd be exactly the same, just differentiated in the fourth dimension. So there's a lot of mechanisms that they could say that
try that. But the part that just threw me is like, I mean, Saul's explanation to this to the Jedi, well, to each other, was like they were created from the Force, like literally, like the mother created them to put in her. And the reason I say that is it's like so. And I wish Leslie Headland would have did her research, and that's what kind of made me mad about this. She didn't do enough research, because first off, if she would have went that route, there was one other virgins in the Force, which was Anakin. And the only reason Anakin was created in Shmi is because Plagueis wanted to create life. He wanted to create another version of a Sith Ultimate, right? when the Force found out that he was trying to do that and he was getting close to that, whether he's messing with these sisters, which they could have told that story, the Force then created Anakin and put him into Shmi. That's how Anakin was created. He wasn't created from Plagueis. He was created by the Force correcting what Plagueis was trying to do. And that's a canon story. If she knew that, she wouldn't have said this, because this is 89 years pre-Anakin. So for them saying, "Oh my God, there's never been a virgin in the Force," there's these two girls here. So now we have to go around, and as we talk about Georgia's story, we just throw everything out of the window. When she could have told a story, and like I said, it's not horrible, but if she would have did a little more, just a little research, she could have made this make sense. Because we could have said and been like, you know why Anakin, they didn't want to train Anakin? Because we had these two girls that were the first virtues of the Force. That didn't work. So you know what? When Qui-Gon found him, we found another virtues of the Force. They could have paid that off by saying, yeah, this is why we didn't train him.
It does feel like Yoda should have maybe referenced this in Phantom Menace and be like, do you remember that time like 90 years ago? Like, look at Ki-Adi-Mundi and be like, you remember that like 90 years ago when those chicks showed up and we let them train and then nothing good happened from it whatsoever?
Well, the one, they didn't know about the other one.
Oh, that's right. Remember when we got lied to by that dead Jedi that's been dead for 100 years, Soul? Remember that? We're still alive and would remember that the same way all of us remember stuff that happened in our career from like 20 years ago that probably still sticks in our craw. Right? Like, I mean, I know for me, I got some vendettas that definitely are stretched back into the early 21st century when it comes to that stuff, right? So these guys would remember it 100 years later. So, I don't know.
That's crazy. But yeah, it's just like I think that she definitely deserves. I mean, she's not like a crap. I wouldn't say she's a crap director. So I don't want to project that she's not.
If you've not seen Russian Doll, you actually should see it. It's really good.
I'm like halfway through it. So yeah, she's not bad. It's just
that's why you'll notice I've not spoiled it.
It's sort of begs a question when I ask that question about Russian Doll, as far as, okay, if she's a good director and she was, quote unquote, let's just call it mid on this, what was it that made her mid on this and good on that? Was it the material? Was she not adept with like handling it? Was it Disney? That sort of like put their hands into it?
A little bit.
If you like, David Blaine is like a street magician, right? You take that and you do the same trick in an auditorium, it doesn't always work. I think this story,
fair point.
Story doesn't have some weird mystery that's going to be ambiguous throughout the story and ambiguous at the end maybe, and is complicated and has a lot of different,
that's not what the other stories or series have been. Like, there isn't like the whole flashback thing is
I was about to reference
a new piece. That's not, and even the mystery part of it, like the murder mystery that now we know we know what it is. We know it's a murder mystery. Soul murdered her mother, which really caused a negative effect in the two of them. I mean, that was straight up murder. And it was a bottom line. He killed her for no reason.
I don't think it was for no reason. She was when he struck her, she was an invisible mist. Let's be upfront. So my thinking is that she entered the spirit world, but she's still physically there.
Was she a threat?
Hard to say.
Oh, she's about.
For some reason, and here's the thing about a Virgins. Like, again, the Virgins can be a place. So like the cave, if these Jedi are getting their minds messed with just by being close to this location, apparatus, item, whatever, if it's messing with them, it could cause them to do weird stuff that would not be normal, like being obsessed about training this Padawan all of a sudden when you didn't, you know what I mean? Like, you just thinking, hey, this is
a Wookiee attacking his friends.
Right. So the Virgins gives the Jedi more power. It's like an amplifier. It's like an amp on a guitar. Like the normal Jedi's acoustic, and you plug in to some, Marshall stack, and all of a sudden things are a lot different, right? That's what a Virgins does. So all the stuff about the Jedi getting messed with, all that is very, very interesting, and it can make sense. But if you spend 2 episodes in that time frame I shouldn't be sitting here at the end of it wondering about what are their capabilities? What were they trying to do? They're all dead. It doesn't matter now because you can't tell me. They're all dead, right? They're gone. So what were they trying to do? Doesn't matter. They're all dead. They did their show choir thing and it didn't work out. So I don't know. Like I said, these are frustrating. It's frustrating because it's so close. It's so close.
It was there for sure.
I think to Ken's point too, the flashback thing sort of felt weird to me, even just getting into being not having all that history with Star Wars like you guys. It was sort of weird to me because you're already in was really a flashback in canon, in a story because we already have like the line history of like timelines. Now we're going further back, so technically it is a flashback because we've already been watching things in the timeline and stuff. So now we're getting a flashback in a flashback. So in normal Star Wars stuff, that flashback would have been its own story in maybe an episode or two of its own series or whatever, and it wouldn't have been as clunky as presented here.
And
it's
that's
like
what 7 did. That's what this episode we just watched did. If this had been, because this explained everything. This told us exactly where the story started and why we had this split. Because it's interesting watching episode 1 again. I kind of already thought there was something weird when May, which we didn't know who that was, showed up, and there's Trinity, and we already been introduced to Trinity. Like we know who she is, and we should know that she knows who this girl is. But why is she attacked? Like what happened? What happened with her training that all of a sudden she's gone sour? She's attacking her. That was cool to me. So then I started to actually dig her character a little bit because I already understood
where she was coming from.
And if that was happening in the second episode and the first episode was something about the flashback, you'd think the viewer would think this is Osha. The viewer would think that more than we're thinking, oh, it's just the trope where it's
I thought it was Osha until I saw the tattoo on her forehead, and then I was like, "Oh, but I thought she died." Oh, she didn't. She didn't.
Like that's what the tell is, right? So it would give you different. I mean, I just feel like all the questions that I had, I shouldn't have had, and I should have had different questions. Like, why is Soul so sad and dour? Like you see him in these first couple episodes, he's happy, he's smiling, he's doing all this stuff that made me love that actor in Squid Game, right? Like all the things that made him relatable. And an interesting actor. He's not doing as the older Soul. And so I said this on the show. Why is he? It's like everyone's sad and upset and they have all this mask on their face. And if you had the contrast of this flashback within a flashback that is a flashback from the flashbacks, the prequels are also flashbacks, right? So if you have this interconnected Russian doll flashback situation going on, you shouldn't have more questions, and you should be able to understand what's going on right there. And and I just feel like that's the thing that's missing is, okay, I should have more complicated feelings about what's going on about the early plot because it is more complicated than it seems. And the reason I was unable to have, for instance, like feelings about Master Torben, right? When he takes this poison and kills himself, the reason I didn't connect there is because I didn't have more information about what he was doing before. And if I had, that would have impacted me much more. You know what I mean? To see him paying this price that he feels like he has to pay for something he did when he was a kid. When he was like a teenager, you know what I mean?
Is this the first time we're seeing like non-linear storytelling in Star Wars?
I mean, a little bit. They kind of alluded to it in the sequel trilogy, but I mean,
not as much. It wasn't as like heavy duty.
Yeah. This was really heavy with non-linear. The choice of doing this here,
jumping around, and I mean, I can't think of anywhere else that it was that prominent in regular Star Wars.
The jumps tend to be, episodic. So like Andor's, it's, a prequel to Rogue One, which is a prequel to
A New Hope.
New Hope, right?
Great
so
movie.
those are all technically flashbacks. And that is a really good two-way, like, double feature, right? So if you said, hey, the first half of your movie's a flashback and it's Rogue One, right? You wouldn't like, I don't think I would think to sit down and watch episode 4, then watch Rogue One now, right? Like, I feel like if you're gonna watch those two movies, the order you would watch them in is Rogue One, then episode 4. That's what it belongs in, because Rogue One was custom made to be a lead-in to episode 4. But here, it doesn't feel like that's the case, because the episodes that are taking place in the later timeline here don't feel like they're not tethered to anything before, and there is more before. So it makes sense that we feel like there's something missing, because there is something missing, and it's this information about what went on, in the past. So I don't know. I'm having a hard time getting past my feelings about this presentation, and it makes me feel like I can't even evaluate the rest of it until I'm able to see how big the miss is. Like, I don't know if the fan cuts all stink, then I'll know I'm wrong. But until then, I'm feeling unsure and thus frustrated. I don't know.
No. Yeah, it's one of those. One to go. Right?
We'll get through it.
We will.
On Tuesday.
Teenagers' torture is about to end.
Yeah. It is what it is, right? It's
We usually talk about, like, I think I want to break after next week.
Oh yeah.
I know we don't. We usually talk about rolling into something else, but I'm just.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm
tired, literally, this is like worn me out from Star Wars. Like, I'm gonna be honest. I don't know. I don't even know what's next, to be honest, in Star Wars. So, a lot
we can always write our own stuff.
Yeah,
that's true. That's the funny thing is, I watch I watch House of the Dragon, so I listen to House of the Dragon podcast, and they were talking about something similar, which is, hey, in like 10 years, you're going to be able to say, like, hey, computer, why don't you show me, and then describe exactly what you want. So you can say, hey, why don't you show me what the Game of Thrones would have looked like if they used the book plot? Why don't you show me, what the Acolyte would look like as a movie? We'll be able to do that in our house probably within our lifetime. So we'll get to see all this crap.
So yeah, guys, interesting discussion this week. I don't think it went as bad as some might have thought. There's no 0 out of 10s.
We had that cooling saucer of a day, so it's coming straight out, straight out of the coffee machine next week.
Next week, guys,
it's coming out the box next week.
Next week will be a fun one. To be honest, I wouldn't even worry about it because I'm worn out. So this is probably my peak. Everything's downhill from now. So it is what it is. But we really appreciate everybody.
I do want us all to make sure we think about get our full series ratings the way we did, because I want to see how this moves us next week.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I've got them on record because I kept notes.
And Ken is definitely. I mean, there's no way, but that's amazing.
We'll see. Mix up the episode. Try and watch it in a different, because obviously we didn't really like the way it was laid out.
You're really reaching to try to make this good. I'm just saying that. You remember last week you were creating stories in your head to make it cool?
Yeah, and I still do that.
For you to rate this a 7.3 and you made up a story to make this show cool, that's a wild rating, bro. I'm gonna just say that. You literally made a story in your head and was like, oh yeah, it's a 7.3 based on headcanon. But I digress. We'll see how it ends. But until next week, guys, this is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.